Hi, and welcome to the Saved, Healed, and Made Whole podcast, where holistic health really can be simple, affordable, and attainable for you and your family. I'm your host, Kayla J. Esteban. I am a biblical naturopathic doctor at Sozo Holistic Healing, where I work with natural-minded moms to find healing in mind, body, and spirit. So go grab your favorite cup of herbal tea, take a deep, relaxing breath, and we'll get started. You may or may not know, depending on if you celebrate it, but Ash Wednesday is next week. And if you aren't familiar with what Ash Wednesday is, if you've never heard of it or you're just kind of not sure exactly what it entails. So Ash Wednesday is basically the first day of the beginning of Lent. And some churches celebrate with a special service. You might go and get ashes put on your forehead in kind of the shape of a cross. And I've seen different people do different things. Some people will fast for the day or fast from a meal or have one big meal and two small meals or just not eat meat or something like that. So there's definitely some variety, I think, in how people choose to celebrate Ash Wednesday beyond the ashes. But also, since it's the first day of Lent, if you celebrate, then whatever you have decided to give up for the whole Lenten season this is like the first day that you would start to give that up. And I actually did not celebrate Lent for most of my life until I became an adult. I wasn't against it. It was just like, it just wasn't something that my family did. And as a kid, I remember seeing some friends, like they weren't eating candy for Lent or something like that. And I was like, well, I'm not going to do that if nobody's making me. So I just never did it. But then I went to college, and I don't know if it's just because of the school that I went to, it was like kind of a fad. And I don't know if that was just a little bit of kind of like spiritual posturing or something, or just like positive peer pressure or something like that. But it seemed like a fun thing to do. And hey, everybody was doing it, so might as well. And so I started doing it and I really enjoyed it. And I've just been doing it ever since. So I wanted to pause just real quick before I get more into Lent and fasting and all that stuff. But if you don't mind just taking a quick second, if you are listening on YouTube, to please don't forget to subscribe to help support this podcast and to stay updated on any new episodes. And if you are listening from my website, you can follow me on Pinterest or Instagram at SozoHHP. That's SOZOHHP. And I try to post episodes as soon as they come out on both of those platforms so you can stay updated. So anyway, whether you celebrate Lent or not, I find it very interesting that it starts just right around the beginning of spring. I mean, if you're familiar with Easter, so Lent is the 40 days leading up to Easter Sunday. And since it runs on a different calendar than our calendar, it's kind of complicated. I don't want to bore you with all the details, but basically, Easter moves around every year and it doesn't start on the same day. So it doesn't start exactly right around the same time, but it's kind of a general springtime ish event. And so I think it is really nice that it kind of lines up with springtime, and the idea of fasting during springtime is kind of like a spring cleaning, the way that I think about it. Not just for your body, because it is an excellent way to detox, but it's also kind of nice because of the spiritual element of Lent and the things that go along with it. It's really like a fast for your mind, body, and spirit. And so I love that. And it's very curious to me that many religions and cultures practice fasting in some form or another, because it really is just a powerful and simple. I want to say simple, but not easy, because anybody who's ever fasted from anything knows that it's not easy, especially for as long as 40 days. But it can become it's very straightforward, I guess you could say. And it's not only a physical health practice, but it's also really great for your mind and your spirit too. And I'll go into that a little bit more later. But at least physically, fasting allows your body to really quickly purge toxins from your system. So if you aren't really familiar with kind of how fasting affects your body, when we go without food, our body starts to eat itself, and that sounds kind of weird to say. There's a Latin word to describe it, and I forget exactly what it is, something phagia. But anyway, somebody can leave it in the comments if you know what it is. It sounds very weird, but basically what happens is your body will start with its fat reserves. It'll pull off of the fat and then it'll pull off of the muscle later and things like that. And if you don't know, fats are where the body often will store toxins that it's not able to purge from its system right away. Like if our body has an overload of toxins and it's not really like the liver and the kidneys are not able to let it out of the detox system quickly, it'll just kind of like, when you're cleaning your room or something like that and you don't have time, so you just like shove something under your bed. So that's what the body does with toxins, except it goes into the fats. And so when our bodies start to pull from the fats, it helps to detox because it breaks those kind of like takes those toxins out of being on ice. They're not just stuck in our bodies anymore. They're getting circulated in our system. They're going through the liver and the kidneys and the spleen and the whatever, filtering stuff out. And so this is a great way to detox, but it can also come with some uncomfortable symptoms if you have a really high toxic load or if you're not familiar with fasting before. So some people might experience things like headaches or brain fog or irritability or things like that. Like when we talk about being hangry, I think also sometimes part of this is like just the fact that it's the low blood sugar and the things like that, but it's also because the toxins are getting released into our systems too. And that can cause some irritability. So if you do have a lot of toxins built up, sometimes people go through an actual like a healing crisis or what's also known as a Herxheimer reaction, which can be very uncomfortable. Honestly, I know there are some people who are like, that just means that it's working, but to me, I generally am very conservative with healing crises, and I think that they should be avoided as much as possible because why would you want to stress your body out unnecessarily if it doesn't have to? So, I'm not saying any of this stuff to try to discourage anybody from fasting because it can really help with detoxing, but just to just create a little more awareness of what might happen so you don't think that something is going wrong unusually or something like that. And to just be aware, I'm always on the side of, erring on the side of caution and being more safe. So if fasting is causing you an extreme level of discomfort, it is really important to be listening to your body and either taking a break from that fasting or at least doing something to slow it down. So, like a water fast is going to be probably the most intense, like water only kind of fasting. If you're like only eating one meal a day or only eating two meals a day or something like that, that's going to really slow down the detoxing process. So if you feel like the detox and the fasting is too overwhelming, you can always kind of dial it back and just eat small meals or only eat certain things, and that will kind of give your body time to cope so it's not such an intense process. But anyway, when done correctly, fasting can help your body detox. And when your body has detoxed all these toxins and things that are building up, it just allows our bodies to focus more on healing from chronic conditions and things because it's not being weighed down by all that junk that we build up every day. So not all chronic conditions respond well to fasting. Like if you have any adrenal weakness or fatigue, you might want to just check with your health professional before fasting because anytime your blood sugar gets too low, our adrenals will release adrenaline, and that if your adrenals are already on the weaker side, that can just put an extra strain on your adrenals that you might not want. But there are some chronic conditions like type 2 diabetes that have shown to respond really well to fasting. Although I would say this especially because like diabetes has to do with blood sugar and eating certain foods and things like that. I would definitely, if it was me, I would definitely monitor myself with a health professional while I'm doing the fasting just to make sure, like I said, being on the safe side. But besides just the physical, fasting takes discipline and commitment. I mean, anybody who's ever fasted before knows that it really does take some willpower and strength in your mind. And I remember in high school, asking my teacher why fasting was good for you, and the response that he gave was something like, "Oh, well, when you start to feel hungry, then it's a reminder for you to think about God instead," or something like that. And, my thinking at the time was, well, I don't really agree with that because I know when I'm hungry, I get really distracted by being hungry, and I feel like all I can think about is that I'm hungry, and I can't really focus on praying or reading the Bible or something like that. So, I didn't really feel like that was maybe my favorite explanation for why fasting is important or why it helps you spiritually. Hopefully, these are some better explanations. So, fasting can help with humility and being thankful for the food that we get to eat on other days. It can help us realize our dependency on God to provide us with food every day. It can help us to be more grateful and more empathetic to people that don't get to eat every day, or maybe just don't get to eat quite as much as we do, or don't get to pick the variety that we get to eat. So it can help with humility and gratitude. Although I would say St. Hildegard von Bingen, if you're not familiar with her, I talk about her quite often, but she does give a caution to prideful people because sometimes people that are more prone towards pride when they fast, it can actually increase their pride and kind of make them feel like they're better than everybody else. Like, oh, look at me. I've been fasting for 2 days. And like, you couldn't, I've been fasting for 10 days. You couldn't do that or something like that. So if you feel like that you are more prone to that kind of mentality, um, like that competitive nature or that prideful kind of nature, I know I've definitely been there before. I wouldn't necessarily say don't fast, but maybe just like be mindful of those thoughts that might be coming up while you're fasting and maybe lean more towards the humility and the gratitude side than the competition and the prideful side, because it kind of misses the point of fasting if we do that. So it fasting can also be used as a way to repent for something that we've done wrong, like as a kind of a form of penance or making up uh, for what we've done wrong in the past. And another thing that I think is interesting is that many religions all over the world consider fasting to be a spiritual discipline because as you remove toxins from your body, if anybody who knows that toxins might cause things like brain fog or just a difficulty concentrating. It can decrease your IQ, things like that. So when our body is removed from those toxins, it really helps to clear our mind. And the more our mind is clear, the more we can meditate, we can pray, we can focus on kind of like higher levels of spiritual thinking, and it really increases, like, the less we're weighed down by toxins, the more we have a connection to God. And so fasting can be used as a way to ask for God's direction if you're not quite sure what to do about a certain situation, or can help with just strengthening the power of prayer if you have a very desperate prayer that you are going through in a current moment or something like that, that could really help with just strengthening your prayer and it kinda, like, shows to God our determination, right? Like, kind of like the people that go on strike before something like a building gets demolished or something, and they lie down in front, and you're like, "I don't want you to destroy this building, and, like, you're gonna have to go through my body," kind of thing. So I think us fasting is kind of a way of, like, going on strike a little bit to show God just how much we desperately want this prayer to be answered. Um and fasting can also be used to remove strongholds and break curses. And even though up until now I've been talking about fasting from food, there are so many different ways to fast, and not all of them are even food based. So, like if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, or you have a medical condition that makes fasting from food unsafe, thankfully there are lots of different options. So, I did talk about a water fast. If that's too extreme for you, there's also like a juice fast or something. So, at least you keep your blood sugar up a little bit. You can fast from, maybe one meal a day or two meals a day, or fasting from only specific food or drinks, like I've done a meat fast or meats and sweets fast or fasting from caffeine or sugar or junk food or things like that. You can also fast from certain activities like TV or social media or something like that. You could also fast from certain attitudes or habits. Like one year, I think I did a negativity fast or something about like fasting from complaining or gossip, or if you feel like there's just a certain tendency that or a certain vice or something that you fall into more often, really, like, the possibilities are endless. And a fast that is not food-based may not do quite as much of the physical detox, and you might not experience quite as much of the physical symptoms of it. But our minds and spirits, in my opinion, and from what I've seen from lots of people, I think a lot of us would agree that our minds and our spirits consume just as much junk from negativity and from media and from people around us. And so there are ways to fast and kind of detox from not just our body, but also our minds and our spirits. And to me, it is just as important to take time to cleanse our minds and spirits as it is to remove toxins from our bodies. I think it's one of those things that we think of fasting as just being restricted to food. And sometimes we forget about that toxic buildup in our lives of our activities or our mindsets or our vices. And sometimes just taking time away from these things or these people or these habits or attitudes or whatever it is really makes us realize how much better our lives are without them. Like if you avoid a certain kind of food for a while and then you add it back in, you might like get an upset stomach or start to realize just the negative effects that it has on your body. And you probably would never realize it unless you went clean away from it for a while. Or if like for example, if you're avoiding impulse shopping and now you can actually once you stop it, you can see how much money you get to save when you don't do it. You get to really see the benefits of it or how your life would be different without it. And probably most of us have heard the saying that it takes about 21 days to make a new habit, which is why Lent is really great to break old habits because it goes for 40 days. Actually, so it's 40 days, but they don't include the Sundays. And so technically, I think it's like 45 or 46 days total. So I know people who have fasted from something for Lent and it ends up like they just never go back from it because that amount of time was enough for them to really kind of like get over their fix or something, and they just never went back. So, even if you don't practice Lent, you can always consider your own cleanse or fast that you want to do for a set period of time this spring. If you're not religious at all and you kind of want to steer away from that, you can do like build your own adventure or something. But I do think that springtime is a really great time because, maybe we've put on some holiday weight, maybe we've added some holiday stress, maybe we just need to, now that the sun is out more and we're getting maybe more active, we're not inside quite as much. It's a great time to start new habits, to let go of old things, to sort through the past junk and kind of clean things out a little bit. So please, just as a little side note, be sure if you have any health conditions or you're pregnant or breastfeeding to please consult with your care provider before doing, especially doing anything physical, any kind of physical food or drink related fasting. And if you are fasting this spring, please leave a comment below if you're listening on YouTube or hit the contact button below if you're listening on my website to share what you're fasting from. I would love to support you and cheer you on and pray for you. And let me see, what was I going to fast from this year? Okay. So I think I had decided that I was going to fast from potato chips, which doesn't probably sound like a big deal to some people, but for me, with my Irish roots, I have always been a junk food junkie. And despite all of my health changes, there's, like, certain junk foods that I just, like, have been reliant on, and I've been making healthier switches, like, I'll eat potato chips with avocado oil instead, right? Um, and I don't eat them, like, in excess, it's usually, like, in moderation, a special little something for the day, and not necessarily every single day. But anyway, all of that to say, it's actually a little bit more challenging than it might be for other people. So wish me luck or pray for me, I guess is a better sentiment. But anyway, I hope that your fast goes well if you are choosing to participate or celebrate with Lent and or not if you're doing your own spring Lenten fast, not Lenten fast, I mean. Anyway, thank you very much for listening and have a very blessed day.